In this podcast, we want to dive into the paradoxes and complexities of the Catholic faith.
Jesus is the Lion of Judah and the Lamb of God. He's the same Messiah who drives money changers out of the temple and calls us to himself so we can find rest and peace.
The gospel he gives us is beautiful and simple, and at the same time, challenging and complicated.
So join us as we look at the Lion and the Lamb, the simple and the complex, and try to bring our complicated world into the peace and beauty of the Catholic faith.
Oh, that would be awesome if we say something really dumb that's not all that funny, but we have suddenly the laugh track come through like this. That would be awesome. Oh, that would be so fun. I think we did something in there, with like a laugh track. Oh, that'd be
I was
so
horrified.
Funny.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
Enjoyed it.
It's got to sound like it's filmed in front of a live studio audience. Oh, that'd be great. Hey, Paola.
What up, Father Sam?
How you doing?
I'm doing really
All right.
great.
Well, welcome to Roar Like the Lamb, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we started recording, you were about to tell a story about llama drama.
Llama drama.
I need to
So
understand
excited.
what in the world is llama drama?
I went on the most exciting excursion last Saturday, and I hiked with llamas.
You hiked with llamas?
Yes.
In Connecticut?
In Connecticut, yeah.
Okay.
It's the only farm in Connecticut where you can hike with llamas.
Well, it seems like kind of a niche market. How many people are really out there looking to hike with llamas?
Not that many. I learned a lot about llamas.
Do you ride the llama?
No, you can't. You'll actually break its back.
Okay.
You're not supposed to ride llamas. So here's the thing. It's in Newtown, Rowanwood Farm.
Okay.
Please check it out. You can go hiking with llamas as long as you're 8 and up. They only have 8 llamas at a time. So you got to pick and choose who your favorite people are. So I went with
I don't think I know 8 people who would be interested in hiking with llamas.
Oh, I do. I know a lot. So it was really great. We went with my youth group mom, Lisa Visser. So she helps out. She's been helping me for 5 years. And two of our former youth group members.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
I'm trying to be so serious about it.
Because I know that it's a real thing that actually happened. But you hiked with llamas.
Yes, it was beautiful. So like they rent this space called Stick and Stones or something. And it's like on the mountain. Oh, it's not a mountain. We don't have mountains in Connecticut. We have hills, very large hills. And in this wooded area, there are all these cabins that you can rent for an Airbnb, and there's these hiking trails that you can just kind of go through. So for the first hour, you sign up, you learn all about llamas. You learn that llamas cost $80,000, alpacas cost $200,000. Alpacas are the divas of the llama world. So really, they're so high maintenance, you don't want to keep one. So you choose the llamas. But then the reason is you can't have like a regular size llama because they're too tall. So then you have to get like miniature size llamas, which just are about my height. So that's doable. Otherwise, they would just kind of like go off and do their own thing. They're super temperamental and they're very dominant creatures. So if you don't like establish your authority over them, they can just like, well, I'm just going to take you for a ride.
So you're getting miniaturized llamas.
Yes, but they're big. They're big because regular llamas are very, very big.
Why can't you take a regular size llama?
Because it's too much. So the lady who's had this for 10 years.
You have to be a professional llama wrangler in order to handle the
You just have to be a very sturdy person who will not be taken advantage of. And so like the big llamas were just too much. And so this lady who has had llamas for 10 years learned her lesson. She goes, I can't have real llamas. I'm going to go for the miniature size ones. So there was some from Bolivia, one from Peru, one from Uruguay. It was fascinating. Mine was Lulu. Now, The best part is right as they're setting you up to go into this hike, you're learning about the llamas. There's a volunteer. So I think she was in high school. She was a sophomore in high school. She was analyzing everybody's personality. I came with the obnoxious loud group. You always know when you're at a group event and there's always that one group that's just really loud and obnoxious. And like, you're like annoyed by their presence immediately.
Well, all that means is that you were with Anna.
I was with Anna, Lucy, and Kevin, who doesn't talk, but like he does.
Lisa knows how to be an adult, so she'll be quiet.
No.
It's
Lisa
Anna.
was the loudest.
It's Anna.
No, it was Lisa.
Really?
It was Lisa.
I love them all. For the
we
record.
love them all.
I love them all.
But like the moment Lisa got there, it was just Jersey the entire time. And I was just like, she was late. She like what was supposed to be a 30-minute drive turned into an hour and 15 for her because she missed the farm.
Okay, so how long did you end up hiking with
So
them?
you hike
what distance?
You hike for about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how far do you get to go?
I don't know. I didn't measure. I forgot to turn my watch until the last 15 minutes.
Is that one of those like the llamas are pacing you, or
No,
they
I
just
mean,
kind of go with you?
they're so used to it. They're going on hikes all the time, so they know to line up, and so they line up according to like the llama's personalities. Because there's one who has to be in the front, one who could be in the back based on like, how they are.
So
And
funny.
Lisa's was the best one, okay? Because before you hiked with your llama, a llama was selected for you because they wanted to match you
This
with
llama
the
has
correct
been
llama.
chosen for you.
It has, otherwise you don't want the wrong personality being with you. So Lisa gets
This
the
is-
first llama. This is the best part. I'm sorry.
No. Do you realize that this is just Avatar?
It's been so long since
This is just Avatar, like the flying thing that they have to kind of chooses them.
Yes, exactly.
It has to match your spirit. And
It does,
everything.
yes.
This is how it works.
That's exactly what it
with
was.
Llamas.
Okay, well, if you know Lisa, if anyone's blessed to know Lisa Visser, shout out to Lisa. Lisa is full Jersey and talks a lot. Like, she just talks a lot. So who does she get? She gets Moaning Moon, okay? Moaning Moon is this very loud llama. And llamas like to hum. So this one particularly, the entire time was just like,
So living up to its name.
And so when we
And-
found out that that's what she got, I
Oh my
died.
goodness. And Paola does a great llama impression.
That's all it did. It just hummed.
Okay.
And so there she is
Wow.
talking with her Moaning Moon. And they had a great relationship.
I don't really know what to do with
You
all
can
of
go for
this,
part 2. This time you can sign up to go again. And it's a 2-hour excursion. So you go right into the hiking because there's no need for an hour class.
but- Oh, okay.
So I want to go again.
Yeah.
So that's what I did for fun this past week.
Wow.
Dude, no words.
I can't. I don't know what else to do with that. That's just all of it is so amazing all at once. And
Oh my gosh, you could tell it to go potty and it goes potty. That's how cool it was.
why in the world would you? Oh my goodness.
Because they have to have a bathroom break. They need just like we humans have to go to the bathroom and you're like, okay, time to go potty. So you just make sure you're not standing behind the llama, stand in front of it, and it listens to you and it does its thing. It knows the word potty. It's so brilliant. It's so cool.
And here I was thinking, like, the most exciting thing that happened to me this week was I've like rediscovered cereal. gone so long without eating cereal in the morning. And
Any particular brand? I love Kix.
cinnamon Cheerios.
Cinnamon
There's also
Cheerios.
blueberry Cheerios, which are amazing too.
I haven't had that
Yeah,
one.
just Cheerios.
I'm a fan of like the regular Honey Nut.
It seems like such a silly thing, but all of a sudden I got back to having cereal for breakfast.
Oh.
Forgot how great it is. It's nothing though, apparently, compared to llama hiking.
No, it's nothing.
This
Mine is far
amazing.
superior.
Okay. Well, in this contest I have lost and you have won.
Yes.
Let's talk about competition.
Greatness and glory.
Let's talk about competition.
What a transition.
And I know that was a good one. No, we're going to talk about competition and competitiveness. And I think in this one we're going to learn a few spiritual lessons. There's some important things to learn spiritually about what competition is and competitiveness and how that can influence our spiritual lives. There's also, I think, here some practical application. First and foremost, I want to say for priests and people who are working in some kind of evangelical ministry in the church. So first and foremost, I think that's kind of the goal here is like, let's talk through some of the pitfalls of competition and some of the joys of competition and being competitive. But then I think there's also practical applications for life outside of the church as well, for life for people in different professions and just different things. In that, competition and being competitive, these should not be considered bad things.
Right.
And at the same time, if we get overly competitive, if we do too much with being competitive, we're going to find ourselves in kind of a dangerous spot. Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ready?
All right, go for it.
I don't even know where to start, though. All right.
This is your topic.
Did you watch the Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix?
No, I haven't been
I don't
on
remember what it's called, but
Netflix
anyway,
much.
it's really good. It was, for me, it was like a throwback to my childhood watching the New York Knicks play basketball and like how much I loved watching Knicks basketball and how much I hated the Chicago Bulls and how much I hated the Indiana Pacers and how to this day I still have this sort of visceral reaction anytime I see
And
the
you
Bulls
really
logo.
enjoyed that reaction.
I did, yeah.
It was
I'm not gonna lie.
nostalgic.
But I remember watching this documentary and just feeling a totally different sense about the Bulls. Of the 90s, and they were an incredible team. And all of a sudden now with years of perspective, I can look back and say
this was a really excellent team. These were incredibly talented individuals. These were guys who were at the top of their game, of their profession, and they competed hard. These guys, they did everything. And now with perspective, I can say what an incredible thing it was to have witnessed any of that. At the time, it was just frustrating because my team lost and lost pretty consistently.
Aren't they still really bad? I don't know much about basketball.
Oh, the Knicks are terrible.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, they're awful. I don't even bother watching anymore. It's gotten that bad. But there was a time when it was competitive basketball. They were really good to watch. So as they've gotten now worse, unfortunately, whatever, it's going to be fine. But it was interesting to me that I could see how competitive those games really were and appreciate them for the sake of the competition.
Mm.
And how well everyone was competing and how tough it was. It was just, there was something really special there. Okay. To be competitive means to be driven to something good. So if I'm competitive, I want to be excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, that competition should always be geared towards excellence in one's particular field, in this particular game. On the other hand, to be competitive can also mean that you alienate a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm so competitive that I have to be better than you. I have to do better. There's a great story of Ty Cobb. Do you know who Ty Cobb is?
No, never.
Ty Cobb was one of the first Hall of Fame baseball players. He's famous.
We should just assume I don't know any sports analogies or any sports people.
Nice.
So
Okay.
you have to explain all of them.
Okay, so Ty Cobb he was also a notorious racist and all kinds of difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this guy was a dirty player. Like the rest of the major leagues didn't like him, but he was indisputably one of the best. Just a phenomenal player, not the greatest of people. And the story goes that he came back after a game and his roommate had already gone to the shower, and he dragged the guy out of the shower and threw him out into the room so that he could go take a shower. And he said, "Don't you understand? I have to be first."
Whoa.
He was so competitive that he had to be like the first one to get back to the room. He had to be the first one to do anything. He was so driven by this idea of winning that he couldn't handle the idea that somebody else would have had the chance to get in the shower first. Forget do anything good on the baseball field. He was so competitive. He had to win. He had to be first, everything else. Now, if you get to that level of being competitive, you have a problem. There's something wrong with you. That's not a good thing. That's not a healthy thing. There's something that's going to get in the way. And yet at the same time, to be competitive means you're just driven.
Right.
And you're trying to succeed. All right. In the spiritual life, we need to be competitive because we need to be trying to be the best, the absolute best. We need to be striving for that close relationship with God. At the same time, we can't be doing that at the expense of another person. In this case, we're really competing against ourselves and our own weaknesses. So that sort of little self-victory, self-mastery, exactly.
Yeah.
These are good things. In ministry, there can be a temptation to compete with other people who are also in ministry.
I mean, have I done that?
Several times I have. I
certainly have as well.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's tempting to go and look at another parish's bulletin and see what they're doing. And how are we doing things better? Or this happens, I think, anytime priests are together for a mass or something and you're not the one preaching. You sit there and you think, what would I say instead?
Oh my God.
And you kind of measure your own homily against their homily. And there's like a little bit of, I'd like to call it friendly competition. Like, hey, it's okay that we're doing this, but not for nothing, but I want to be better. I want to be the better preacher here. And I can't lie about that. I can't pretend that it's not there. At the same time, I have to remember that God is using my gifts just as he's using your gifts. And that in this case, we are competing, but we're competing on the same team.
Yes.
We're pulling in the same direction here. I thought of this after our conversation, one of our previous episodes, where I mentioned when I first got to my theological studies in seminary and discovering, number one, I was the youngest guy in the class, and all of the other guys seemed to have all these accomplishments, that they had done things. They had cool backstories, and I had high school as my backstory.
In Strat City.
Yeah.
I've really lived my life.
These guys had done cool stuff. They had been places, they had professions, or they had accomplished things. Like, they had newspaper articles written about them. I had gone to high school.
You were at a Renaissance festival.
Yeah, thanks.
Which was in the paper.
Yeah, I was at a Ren Fair once, and no, that's
at
not
St. Pius.
Here at St. Pius,
exactly.
Oddly enough. Yeah, it all comes back. It all comes back. No, but
such an embarrassing
it was so easy for me. I was 12, for the record. It was not like I was there as an adult. I was 12 and I was playing music, and oh my goodness. Anyway. It's actually a very dear father-son memory that I have.
It is.
Okay?
It's a beautiful.
My dad,
you should frame it.
I had the chance to do these things. Okay. Anyway. It would be easy for me to have looked at those guys and thought, I have to compete against them.
Yeah.
Like I have to measure up to what they can do. And so therefore, everything about this is going to be done in a spirit of competition. And instead, what I very quickly learned was that there was no competition. None of us were there to compete against each other. We were there instead to get holy.
Yeah.
We were there to together grow and understand and unlock our gifts. And it was maybe the first time in my life that I saw people, this is going to sound maybe kind of cheesy, but celebrating each other's gifts. And I was really struck by how guys could rejoice in the fact that someone had a particular talent or a particular gift and be excited when they lived that gift or that talent out. It was really beautiful to see. I watched a special about The Office.
Of course you did. Why would you?
You have to watch this show. It's so good.
I don't
Paola
have
has
access
still
to it
never seen
anymore.
The
I don't
Office.
care. I told the kids last night or like the other night at Edge. I was like, yeah, I don't watch it. Some of the kids are like, what? And I was like, you can talk to Father Sam about that.
It makes
you can
no
relate
sense
to
me.
him.
I don't understand. Anyway, but in this, she talked about Jenna Fisher, who played Pam, talked about how when Steve Carell won an Emmy for the Office, how they felt about it, and how even talking about the story, like retelling how she felt when he won, she started to tear up. She was so excited for him that he had won this, and it was that sharing in his success, sharing in his victory, not trying to be better than him, not trying to be the more famous one, but rather just being able to share in his success and how joyful she was because he succeeded. When you can compete in that way, like we're all trying to pull in the same direction, there can be something really beautiful.
Yeah. A couple of things. It's reminding me of iron sharpening iron.
Mm-hmm.
So we need each other to grow in that. I'm also thinking about all the times where I have tried to be excellent only because I was seeking affirmation and acceptance. And so I would feel the need to compete. Focus, for example, when you're at training and you meet all these incredible people and you're like, well, I'm not like any of these people. Like they're so much better. Like, what do I have? So either I could like completely downgrade myself and like, I'm a worthless piece of scum, or I could just be like, well, I have to just be better than everybody else. And it wouldn't allow for like teamwork. It wouldn't allow for, it just like, I would have like internal resentment toward people, but really not because of anything they did, but because of how I assumed that they were. And I was like, well, I don't like you because you're like this. And I'm assuming that you're just like this in general. So I'm not even going to take the time to get to know you. But St. Paul also says like, go like to compete, go run so as to win. Like go win the imperishable crown of Christ and not one that is imperishable. And so Paul is saying, like, go be excellent, that you're called for excellence, and you need other people around you who are also pursuing excellence in the same way that Aristotle says, like, the highest types of friendships are the ones that are virtuous. So I can only become more excellent if I'm surrounded by other virtuous people. I can only become more virtuous if I'm surrounded by other virtuous people. I can only become, like, more saintly if I'm surrounded by saints in the making. And like saints always come in clusters. A saint isn't made on its own. Like, oh, I'm just going to like be by myself and like not be in community and, I'm going to be a saint. I mean, unless you're like a hermit and you have a special calling and a mission and a grace and a charism to do that, then yes. But for the most part, everybody has to be.
But even the hermits.
Well, yeah, they're based off something else. Like,
and even the hermits usually have some kind of community. There's another hermit that they know who's
right,
like
exactly.
in a hermitage, 4 miles away or something. And like they each walk 2 miles and meet up and talk about it.
Yeah. So yeah. I remember very clearly the times where I would have this frustration and competitiveness inside of me was women's ministry. And you're on a team with another girl missionary. And sometimes it would feel like, oh, she has this many people who are like, seeking her out for help. I have this many. if I can just get more, then it'll just be a little bit better. Like for me, because I wanted to feel validated, because I was just like, am I not good enough? Am I good enough? So it's just like, it's a weird thing,
Sure.
a human nature thing where you're just like, well, I just want to be better. I've grown over that. Praise the Lord, because now I'm more willing to approach people in a place of like, I want to work with you. And then when something awesome happens in their life, I can actually glorify God. Because beforehand, I was only based on the reading you had me say, and I was like, oh yes, this is so very true. I was seeking to glorify myself.
Yeah. All right, so let's go back to some sports stuff.
Yes, again.
One of the keys in this, all right, it would be one thing if we all were pulling for this one goal, and okay, we all understand that we have a role to play, but where it gets dangerous is I'm trying to be like that person over there. I'm trying to do what they can do. I'm trying to have the same gifts as them. I'm trying to have the same success that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's all really great. When my brother was a little kid, he played soccer one year. My brother's a great athlete. He's always been a good athlete. He played soccer one year and hated it. And he hated it because at the age of, he must have been 7. So he's out on the soccer field at the age of 7, and he's figured out what needs to happen in order for this game to work. But instead, the ball goes and he's trying to get to a spot where he can be open to receive the ball. And every other kid on the field is running after the ball. So the ball would get kicked, and then just however many little 7-year-olds would just chase after the ball. And there's my brother and the goalie in the other goal. And my brother would just stand there and scream at them. He'd be screaming at the other kids going, what are you doing? You have to spread out. Like he's yelling. He's this like little angry 7-year-old. Gabe is so angry that these kids are running all over the place and just after the ball, and nobody would pass the ball to one another. There was no sense of teamwork. It was just, I have to get the ball. That's how soccer works. And of course, that's not how soccer works. I don't even know anything about soccer, but I know that that's not how soccer works. He would get so frustrated if everybody's going after the same thing and is trying to be the same player, do the same thing. Nothing's going to work. But look at the Bulls, and look at what made them so successful.
I don't tell me,
90s.
because I'm not sure.
What made them so successful? You had Michael Jordan. He's the greatest, and Michael Jordan being Michael Jordan. But then you also had Scottie Pippen, who was playing this incredibly important role as a power forward. You had Dennis Rodman come in, whose job it was to rebound.
Wasn't he an actor? Is he an actor? No. No. See, this is
Dennis Rodman an actor? Well, in a way, Dennis Rodman appeared on MTV many times, but no, he's not an actor.
Never mind.
Okay.
It just sounds like an actor's name.
He was this incredible rebounder.
Okay.
He was a guy who you needed in that spot. Earlier in the 90s, they had Charles Oakley, who later went on to play for the Knicks. And Oakley, his job was he was the enforcer. He was the guy who would knock people around if they got too close to the star player. He was great at that, and it was awesome to watch him do it. This was back when like basketball was really tougher. Oh, it was so cool to watch Charles Oakley play. He was awesome. It was great.
So you're saying basketball now is really wimpy?
It's not that it's really wimpy. It's that they used to allow for a little bit more physical play. There's some more fouling going on that they just kind of allowed.
So really the spirit of the 80s compared to today's 2020s is like, let it be soft.
The spirit of the 80s.
It's the only way that I can explain it.
I've never heard anything described as the spirit of the 80s. That is so disturbing. Anyway.
That's how old it is.
Okay. But everybody on the team had their particular role, and they played it. And because they played it, that made these teams great, because they knew what their job was. They knew what they could do. And they knew that they had to play their role. If they didn't play their particular role, nothing good was going to happen. And therefore, all of that competition that they had was going to be wasted. All of that competitive nature that they had was going to be wasted because they were all trying to do something else. They're all trying to do ultimately like the wrong thing. One of the things that saved me in seminary was as guys started recognizing their own gifts and celebrating each other's gifts and being able to encourage each other with that, we also realized that in mission, when we started going out and doing our apostolic work, that certain guys were going to be really good at certain things. And so if you encountered a person who had this particular need, you knew, oh, that's not me. I'm going to introduce you to this guy because this is the person who's going to connect with you. This is the person who's going to help you with that. But then we also learned to watch each other. And as we watched each other, as we observed, we learned from each other. And the more we learned from each other, the better we got at picking up the gifts that other guys had, and so applying them in our own lives. There's one guy who had this incredible gift with beggars. The streets of Rome are just littered with people who are begging. And he had an ability to sit down and talk to them. He would stop wherever, he'd just walking down the street on his way to class. He would stop and he would sit with these beggars and he would talk to them. And he'd get their name. He'd get their backstory. He would find out the names of their family members, and he would just talk to them and connect with them. So much so that they stopped begging from him, and they would just get excited when he walked by.
Oh.
And he knew their names. So we'd walk, and the beggars take the same spot every day.
Yeah.
And so he would walk by and knew their name. Well, pretty soon, the rest of us picked up the names of the beggars.
Wow.
So we learned the names of all these beggars along the way to school. Why? Not because we had any particular gift, but because this other guy was really good at connecting with them.
Right.
So we were able to then
You were brought into the
adopt
gift.
a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I went back to Rome. This is one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I went back to Rome maybe 2 years after I was ordained, so 10 or 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went back for a visit, and I was walking down the street, had not been in Rome in at least 2 full years. And there was this beggar, and he called out my name because I had met him way back when and had learned his name, and
yeah.
I was scrambling to remember his name, and it moment of grace, I can't think of it now, but moment of grace, I remembered his name, and we had this little conversation. Hey, it's nice to see you again. Yeah, I've been home in America. Things are fine here in Rome. I'm trying to keep everything okay. this homeless beggar is telling me about how things are going there, and it was so
That's
incredible.
So beautiful.
And it was all because I learned from this other guy how to make that kind of a connection. That wasn't a skill that I had. That wasn't anything that I knew how to do.
Yeah.
How many times did I see that where I realized that my own particular gift or something that I might have been good at in ministry, I needed to share it with somebody else. I needed to share it with one of my classmates. Then in priesthood, like in active priestly ministry here in the diocese, what happens? I know that there are certain people who I'm going to call on. Like there's one priest who I go to if ever there's a question about spiritual warfare or how to deal with sort of tense situations that might involve some demonic influence or something. I know exactly who I'm going to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't ask most of my other priest friends, but I know that this is the guy.
Yeah.
I don't want that gift that he has. I'm not looking for it. But I also realize I don't need it. Yeah. I don't need to compete with him. Like I don't need to be better than him. I don't need to have my name more well known than his name is. It doesn't
This is truly like the fullness of the body of Christ, because not everyone can be a head, like not everyone can be the foot. So in order for the body to work correctly, you need hands and feet and a head. Jesus being the head, so like we're all oriented to Christ, the Godhead. But the importance of a pinky is just as important as the nose. Like, I mean, you take your pick, but there's joy in one that when you're centered around Jesus Christ and your desire to first glorify him, that in everything you do, you are mainly called to glorify Jesus and to proclaim his name and to baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like that is the mission, and that's everybody's single mission, and how each of those missions are going to be carried out differently. I've even realized like I would have not chosen like youth ministry for myself. Like that was clearly a call from the Lord and a call through Father Sam.
I chose it for you.
Because Jesus told you to hire me.
Right. He did.
Which I didn't know for 6 months until after I started working here. But so what I've noticed in this time, it's funny.
Golly.
Go. We didn't share this on the podcast yet?
I don't know.
Do we need to go on a tangent real quick?
All right. So when I was assigned to St. Pius, I knew that one of the important things to do was to hire a youth minister. We needed somebody who could do the job full time. And so I was looking around and thinking of what we could do, how youth ministry would look at St. Pius. And I had met Paola while she was a focus missionary at the Coast Guard Academy here in New London, Connecticut. And after several different opportunities to interact together, especially in ministry settings, you came and you gave the class retreat for the juniors at Trinity Catholic when I was chaplain there.
Yep.
I came up and gave a talk to
your cadets.
So
nervous that day.
It was great though. I got to see what you could do, and we'd started to kind of form this friendship where we were talking to each other about ministry and things like that. And you had some questions. You were going to be on retreat at the Sisters of Life. You wanted to talk through a decision that you had to make. And I knew it was about focus and about whether or not you were going to stay with focus. And meanwhile, I was thinking about youth ministry here and what should happen. And I had a list of people who I had been thinking about, and each person who I would think about and pray about, God would say no, 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 and give me even the reason sometimes why certain people were not the right choice. It was wild. So I knew that none of the people who I had come up with on my own, because I had not prayed about who I should be thinking about, I had just come up with the list myself. And it was the day before we were supposed to meet.
That's how soon it was?
Yeah, the day before.
Shut
and
up. What?
The day before we were supposed to meet, I was shaving. That's why I don't shave anymore.
Because you don't know what the Lord is going to ask?
Exactly. I have no idea what might happen.
Oh my gosh, that's so dumb.
So I was shaving, and he said, "You are going to ask Paola to be the youth minister."
Mind blown.
And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Yeah, that's the answer." So then when we sat down and you started telling me all of the things that were on your heart about staying with Focus, because Paola had been offered a position as team director.
Well, no, I had an interview that Tuesday, and you knew it.
Yeah, but you were
I was set. I was ready. I was like, Lord wants me to take the next step in leadership.
And not only that, not only did you feel like the Lord was asking you to take that next step in leadership, you felt like this was something that had an application for the whole church. But as you talked about it, I don't know if you remember this.
I was crying a lot. It was a really rough day.
It was a rough
That was
day.
actually one of the worst days. I felt like I just wasn't a good missionary that day.
As you were talking, everything that you said about staying with Focus was like, it makes perfect logical sense. This is a beautiful thought. Yes, absolutely. I see why Focus makes sense, but there is absolutely no peace in this woman's heart.
No.
You were so agitated, and I could see that there was something that was being asked of you that you genuinely had no idea what it was. You were trying to figure it out, and
the Lord was being silent.
Well, the answer that you thought that seemed to make the most logical sense was in front of you, but you felt no peace with it, and you felt completely not at ease. So
it's true.
I waited until you finished.
Until I stopped crying.
You hadn't really started crying that much. It was like little tears here and there, just because you felt.
It was a lot, you know.
You just didn't have any peace. You stopped your story and you said, "Okay."
And then you picked up,
What
so can I tell
do?
you what I wanted to tell you? Like, there really was no transition. It was just like, I really want to tell you what I've been trying to tell you for 2 days.
I remember asking you, well, can I ask you to think about something that isn't going to help your discernment? Like, I'm going to ask you something that, with all the confusion that you're experiencing, might contribute more to the confusion, but I know that I have to take this risk.
There wasn't any pastoral care to everything I had just dished out. He was just like, I'm going to add one more thing.
Well, it was one of those moments where, yeah, okay, if I was thinking about how to do pastoral, I probably would have tried to gently. Remember we talked about this, being gentle and guiding people along?
Yeah, you're like.
The Lord said, no. Because I had this real conviction as you were talking that what the Lord had put on my heart to ask you about was actually the thing that was going to bring peace to all of that chaos that you were experiencing. So I asked you to think about coming here to be the youth minister.
Yeah, but the way he did that was very long-winded, because he was like, okay, well, let me tell you what's going on. So he's telling me how he's moving to St. Pius. Here's the history of St. Pius. Here's what's, some not so good parts about St. Pius. And then he starts talking about youth ministry. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, I don't understand. Like, he's not making his intention very clear from the beginning. He's just sharing a lot of history and a lot of what he desires. So in my head, I'm like, does he want me to come and give a talk to the youth ministers who are already there? Like, I don't know what he wants me to do. Then he just finishes with saying, so I need a youth minister. Like, that was his ask. And I looked at him in complete shock, so much shock, that the first word that I said was golly. No one says golly.
Golly, Father Sam, I don't know what to say. It was amazing. It was amazing.
It was great. So then that day, though, it was awesome, because we were supposed to meet the day before, but things happened because we were helping to lead a retreat for Focus at the Sisters of Life, but we had to meet that Saturday. And the moment that was offered, I felt the Father, like God the Father's personal presence in my life. But that day, it was so clear that with all of the unsettling that I had in my heart that I was carrying, God the Father broke through, and I was just covered in his presence when you asked me that question. And it was made so very clear that this was God's desire for me. And then I walk into, the church, because I'm literally stunned. I'm literally stunned that this was offered to me, because I wasn't looking to leave Focus, because it didn't make sense to leave Focus. Like, I'm like, why would I leave Focus? It's great. And I walk into mass. I open up my Magnificat. Sorry, it was like a little stutter. And I read the day. The feast day is actually to St. John Bosco, and then I just start crying all over again. If you don't know St. John Bosco, he's the patron saint of youth and youth ministry. And I was like, but I hated high school Jesus. I really, truly despised.
Did you hate high school, Jesus, or did you hate high school Jesus, like Jesus when he was in high school?
That was so dumb.
That was a dumb grammar joke, but it was a funny one. It's funny.
Yeah. So I sat there and I was just like, no way. Like I'm not cut out for this. Like I was a super shy kid. I just had really horrible experiences. I also wasn't living a faith life in high school. So like, well, so what could I do? I had a really big preference for college students just because they were willing to like dive into their questions a little bit more. And I don't have to do games.
All of this, just reliving this story just makes your first few days as youth minister even better.
Oh my gosh.
In Paola's first few days as youth minister, she had to take our youth group on their mission trip. So she goes with
on a bus with 50 people I don't know.
She didn't know any of the kids yet, and every year at Catholic Art Work Camp they have the adult skit, and so we had Paola on stage.
It's the cringiest thing in the world.
As a giant baby.
Oh my gosh,
She's
those blow up baby costumes.
It was so funny. It was great, but see, that's what youth ministry is all about. Okay, we're coming back to competition.
Right.
And being
so,
competitive,
sorry, long tangent.
That's the important thing here.
But here's what I learned since then is when you live out of a place of a calling and you live from a desire of to glorify God and to do His will, the spirit of competitiveness is now oriented toward the salvation of souls.
Right.
Like I am gung ho for doing anything that I need to do so that somebody will meet Jesus. And I'm so grateful for God to like give me that desire. So like, I don't mind. Okay, we're planning for Seek, and I was here like at way past any time anybody should be at church. But I was, have my praise and worship music out loud at 11 o'clock at night, just like joyfully planning for Seek. And I'm like, this is great. Figuring out meals, doing this. And I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, Jesus, I'm so thankful I get to do this. I'm so thankful that I get to prepare for people to meet you next weekend. And I'm so willing to enter into like, I want to do this well. So I'm like, even like the emails have to look nice. Even like the things that we're preparing have to look nice. There's a desire for excellence because I want to glorify Jesus. I want to glorify God. And one, I know it's attractive because I've seen when people live for the Lord, they do it with such this excellence, but also this humility. They're not seeking like attention or affirmation. Like, I just want to please you, Father. Like not you.
No, I know you were speaking God the Father, not
right.
Father Son. I understand.
Yeah,
that.
You're not that high up.
I'm definitely not.
No, you're not. But it's amazing that from this switch that I've had where, okay, as a young girl, always struggling to find myself. I was super shy, always trying to like please other people, then moving into a space where, okay, like I'm starting to move into a place of self-possession, but I still think I need to kind of really be competitive or show off so that people could see me, so that people would recognize me. But that's because I wasn't allowing myself to be seen by God the Father. If I don't know God the Father, I'm not actually going to be free enough to enter into rejoicing in the graces or the gifts that God gives other people. Yeah. Because I think, well, what about me? I'm getting gypped. So I turn into this older son. So I have had to go through my own, again, like surrendering, like my surrender to God the Father and His voice over my life. So I'm not listening to my own voice or the voice of the enemy, which is competing with the voice of God. But this freedom to just simply be a child of God. And that's, I mean, like, I realize like that's the secret to the Christian life is just possess your identity as a child of God. It's going to unlock everything that you need. You're just going to be so much of a better Christian. You're going to be so much of a better team player, but because you know that you're loved. But if you don't know that you're loved, if you don't know that you're eternally loved, and I had a big revelation of that 2 years ago, how eternally loved I am, that when I do things, okay, I probably should be better at delegating, but I'm like, whoa, wait, I'm impressed at how much more I'm capable of doing. One, because it's God's calling, but also how His grace is working in my life. Mm-hmm. because I didn't want to take that leadership position. I was afraid of taking the youth ministry position because before that, I would have seriously just preferred to be a helper from the back. I just want to be in the back seat. I want to help out. And God's like, no, I need you to lead. So he had me pray with the story of Moses. Like Moses was my guy for like 8 months. So I was studying and praying with Moses.
Cool.
Moses had a stutter. Moses couldn't, like, he had to have Aaron talk to him to Pharaoh. He was like, well, how's this going to happen? I can't do this. And I was like, dude, I identify with Moses. And then what's he do? Moses performs miracles and then frees the people from Egypt. And I'm like, God's like, I want to do something like that in your life. Like, you're not like, Paula, I don't want you to be in the back seat. And I'm like, but I like the back seat. I don't like to be up front.
Right.
So now what? I'm giving like talks 3 times a night. I'm constantly lead. I'm like, I just never would have thought that I would be in a position of so much, I guess, influence, but it wasn't because I was seeking it. It's because God has called me into it.
Right.
And
not only does God call you into it, but God gives you what's necessary so that you can do it. A lot of times when we're trying to grasp at something for ourselves or for our own sake, or because we're just driven by competition. I want to have this. I want the position. I want to win.
Right.
We're aiming for something that is not part of God's plan for us. And because it's not part of God's plan for us, we end up not really succeeding at the thing we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're able to recognize that God does have a call, a plan for us, particular gifts that he's given to us, and we learn how our gifts fit into the overall mission, we learn how our gifts can be given and how they can be used, how they can best be used in a suitable way, then we start looking at other people, other ministries, other ministers, and we start to realize that some of their gifts would complement ours.
Yes.
Or some of the things that they're doing can be replicated. I can do that. And we learn that what they're doing can be applied in our own particular situation. I like that you brought up the prodigal son with your reference to being an older son.
Oh, because he doesn't know he loved.
Right. The older son in that story has been faithful. He's done everything he's supposed to do, but he doesn't realize that anyone has ever seen him. And one of the driving factors for a lot of people in trying to be more competitive is that they feel unseen.
Yeah.
They feel unnoticed. And so there's this desire. I want the award. I want the recognition. I want my name to be read out loud. I want somebody to see me. Because that's the nice thing about getting an award. Somebody saw me. Somebody knows me.
It's a good thing to honor people. That's why we honor the saints. That's why we honor good men and women.
But there can be a temptation to say, I have to get the prize. I have to get the award. I'm working on this for the sake of getting recognition. And if that's my goal, is just to get recognized, then I'm missing the point. I remember in high school, I really wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be seen.
I think that's all high school students.
Yeah, exactly. No, it really is. I didn't have a spiritual understanding of it, though. I didn't put that in a spiritual light until much later. But that desire to be seen and known, well, then after high school, when I was in the seminary and all of a sudden I started to be seen and known, people knew me because I was a seminarian, because I was one of the young seminarians for the diocese, because I was a product of Catholic schools in the diocese.
You were the poster boy.
I was one of a few, but I was sort of out there a lot. And all of a sudden I realized I don't think I like being recognized this much. I don't think this is what I want, because I was in the burden of recognition and the responsibility of it was there. And I realized I wasn't ready for that responsibility. All this time that I wanted to be known and recognized and kind of seen for what I could do, nothing in me had been cultivated yet to develop any kind of a leadership skill or humility for that matter. And I realized just how ill-prepared I was for some of this. And so I needed to learn how to use my gifts properly and how to orient them in the right direction, not for my sake, not for the sake of having recognition, but rather for the mission.
Yeah.
And I also needed to learn how to recognize and rejoice when others were recognized. That was a hard thing for me to do. It was hard for me to, I had friends in school and they would get recognized and I would get no recognition. And it was hard for me to rejoice after a while when they kept getting recognized. The thing is that they deserved the recognition that they got. They had worked hard for it, and they had done good things. I hadn't done the things that they had done, and they deserved the recognition that they got. over time, as I started to understand what it was to rejoice in that recognition, it's really good. But it remains something that's honestly, it's hard for me.
Yeah.
Because there are times I'll look at another parish, I'll look at what another priest is doing and think, I wish that was me. I wish I was doing that, or I could do better. Worse, I think I could do better. I'm better at that thing or whatever it is than he is. And it's something that I've had to kind of wrestle with in my own prayer. That's why the litany of humility, we're going to talk about the litany of humility later.
Yeah.
But the litany of humility is so important. I had this experience though, like a real grace not too long ago. I was doing spiritual direction with a focused missionary. And he came to me one day and he's gotten to know a few priests in the area. And this one particular priest is Father Sean Calesi, who's across town here in Fairfield. He's the pastor at Holy Family St. Emery's. Now, Father Sean has a gift in spiritual direction. He's really good at helping people with their discernment. He's really good at challenging people to grow spiritually. He's a priest who I call pretty regularly for confession. if I need to go, hey, you got a few minutes? I'm coming over. He's great, and he's a good friend. We've been friends since seminary. But this guy called me and he said, I've been talking to Father Sean about some things, and he's really given me some good advice and helped. I think it might be better, and I've been praying with this for a couple of weeks. I think it might be better if I went to him for spiritual direction. And I said, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And it was this moment of grace where once upon a time, I can tell you there would have been an intense feeling of jealousy. Like, no, I'm the one. I'm the better spiritual director. I'm better.
I want all the focused missionaries.
Yeah, as though it was about me.
Possession, yeah.
There was a time in my life where I know that would have been my feeling. And I felt none of that. Instead, it was this like real freedom. Yeah, actually, Father Sean's first of all, he's a great priest. So I'm glad that you've chosen a really good priest as a director. Number two, you're talking about things that he's helped you with that you've shared with him in just an ordinary conversation, not even in the context of spiritual direction. That means that immediately you saw him as a spiritual director, even though he was not your spiritual director. And that means that you were free enough to talk to him in that way. Well, that tells me that God is the one guiding that conversation, because you saw in him something that said, speak about this.
Yeah.
Have this conversation. Share with him this challenge that you're facing. And you did it, even though he's not your director. And therefore, you wouldn't normally have that kind of a conversation. And I realized this guy in prayer and in his own personal conversation found a spiritual director better suited to him.
Yeah.
What can I do but be grateful? Because this young man wants to now continue to pursue holiness of life. He wants to keep growing, and he found someone who can help him to grow in a way that I can't. What would happen if I tried to stand in the way of that?
This reminds me of when you are part of somebody's story and somebody's story of coming to Christ, but you might not be the one who's called to mentor them and disciple them. You might have been the gateway and the door for them to accept Jesus, but it's probably going to be somebody else who's going to do the rest of the formation. And that's a lesson I learned as a missionary. And I was like, you know what? I was just here for this first step, but you're going to need this person for this. And I had to be okay with that I couldn't do it all. So that reminded me of that. And then another thought that I had when you were talking about how recently, kind of walking into this place of this freedom, I love to think about Jesus, that for 30 years, he led a hidden life. Purposely led a hidden life, growing. Letter. Anyways, again, listen, I'm on 4 hours of sleep.
This is the best.
So like,
I'm so happy.
But I love this because Jesus, good Jesus, I'm 30. All right. So like he started his, apostolic ministry, his public ministry at 30. So I feel like I'm kind of moving on up there where I felt a little hidden.
Moving on up.
Well, yeah. So no, because recently, since I've turned 30 or like right towards the end of 29, all of these opportunities have started showing up. And I was like, but why? But how much over the last, decade or so, there's been a lot of interior work of knowing God the Father, of growing in grace, growing in the movements of how the Holy Spirit is building my heart, how he's healing my heart, and me just coming into a greater place of self-possession in order that I may make a greater gift of myself in whichever way God desires. So, I mean, I hope my time doesn't end at 33 is what I'm saying. But there's something so beautiful to just remaining hidden in the heart of the Father.
Right.
Then when you remain hidden in the heart of the Father, this is where this purifying will come from. It's so beautiful. But if people can understand that, then you understand the reason why you're competitive. Why is it that it might go like this? Or why do you get jealous? When something, I had received a great gift when I crashed my car and someone gave me a free car, and it's happened twice in my life.
You didn't crash your car. You got hit.
Oh, I got hit. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So on 2 separate occasions.
Different time that you crashed your car?
No, I crashed another one, but that's why we have another car now.
Oh,
so
no.
It's really bad. But anyways,
Oh,
2 times God has given me the great gift of having 2 free cars, like out of nowhere. Like, not because I asked, but the Father was like, here, I'm going to give you these gifts. Like, I need to be better at holding on to these gifts. But so I got these 2 great gifts. And so I was talking to a family member, and her response was, as she told this other friend, she goes, well, I've been here the whole time. How come God isn't blessing me with his favor? And so she couldn't rejoice in how the Father was providing for me, because she felt like she was getting gypped like the older son. Like, why does he get the fattened calf in a party? I've been here the whole time working in the field. And it kind of broke my heart, because for me, what I saw is like this family member didn't see how loved she is by God the Father. And that when one receives a favor, it doesn't take anything away from you. And if we do believe that when we watch other people receive gifts from the Father or receive graces and favor, there's a temptation to think we're getting gypped, that I'm just getting crumbs. Well, what's left for me? Or maybe I'm not worthy of it. Well, I'm just not as good as this person, so maybe that's why I don't get these things, because I'm not good. These are all excuses that I've heard myself say and other people say. And all God the Father wants is like, can you just dwell with me? Can you just let me tell you how much you're loved, and that my favor over you is going to look different, because every single person is unique and every person's mission is going to be unique. It's not going to be the same. And that's something to rejoice in, because I'm only going to get to do me once. There's only going to be one of me. And how my mission is going to be lived out on this earth it's just going to be me. Like, it's just awesome that something has been set aside just for me to accomplish with in and through Jesus. But
the accomplishment of that thing that has been set aside for you, though, only happens when you know the gifts that God has given to you, and you have that freedom to exercise those gifts.
Right.
When you know what it is that God has given to you, this is your skill, this is the particular charism, this is the way in which the Holy Spirit is going to work through you. When you know your gift, then you can use that gift
and cultivate it and let it grow, and like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you allow God then to call you deeper into your particular mission. All right, so some practical applications.
Yes, humility, because how do you grow in humility?
Humility is huge. But I think first, just to realize that if we're going to compete, we have to know that we're competing for the greatest prize, which is heaven. That's what St. Paul, as you mentioned before, that's what St. Paul is talking about, is running so as to win the race. You play the game to win.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's
you put it all in there.
Edwards, I think, said that. You play to win.
Is that another
you play to
sports
win the
guy?
game? Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Football coach. You play to win the game.
I know nothing.
You're trying to win. That's the whole point. But what we're trying to win is heaven.
Yeah. And bringing as many people with us as possible.
Right. We desire that relationship with God, and that's the whole reason for all the things that we do. So for anybody who's in mission, who's in ministry in the church, priests, youth ministers, anybody who's working for the church in some capacity, if we recognize that that's the purpose, we don't have to invent the new program.
No.
We don't have to come up with the new vision or the new thing. What we have to do is put our gifts at the service of the Lord and give to him everything that we have. We also have to be able to recognize that there are other people who are aiming for the same goal, who have different gifts and talents than we do. God has called them to use their gifts in a particular way. We have to let them use their gifts. We have to we have to figure out a way that they can also participate in it, and allowing them to have their moment, or recognizing that their gift is the thing that needs to be used at that moment and that you don't need to be there. To take a step back is one of the greatest and most important things you can do. It's also, honestly, it leads you to a greater feeling of personal freedom.
That's why I'm so excited for Seek, because I can't wait to see what people's gifts are. And then I'm going to be like, hey, do you want to do this?
Yeah. Because when people recognize their gift, and they recognize that the Lord has blessed them in a particular way, wants them to do something, they embrace their mission, they're able to go out and do other things.
Yeah.
In priesthood, when a priest realizes that another priest has a gift for confession, another priest has a gift for prison ministry, hospital ministry, another priest is really good at working with people in grief, another priest is really good at working with couples preparing for marriage. When you realize these gifts that other guys have, you start to look at them as an example instead of as competition. When you realize that a priest can be a great preacher, you realize this is somebody who can come and preach to my own congregation, my own people, and help them to grow. If they hear from this person, or if they have this experience of God through this particular minister, it's going to help my mission. And it's not competitive.
No.
It's not about going to a better place or being better than the next guy over, than the next parish over. Rather, it's about, we work together, we work for the same goal, we're on the same team, we're pulling in the same direction. We need to have that back. Likewise, in ministry, youth ministry, for example, to do everything that you can to put your gifts at the service. But then how many of the youth ministers in the Diocese of Bridgeport are you having conversations with?
Well, now that I'm area contact.
Well, yes. Paola is also an area contact for life. But you have these conversations with other youth ministers.
Yeah. Well, I'm constantly inspired by
But what's the point of it? The point of it is not for you to go and brag and say, look how great I'm doing, nor is the point of it to say, you have to do it my way. The point is to say, look at the things that are possible, and then to share experiences. And as you share those experiences, you learn from one another. We can copy each other. In fact, plagiarism in this case is a great thing.
It's the point.
Under any other circumstances, I'm supposed to discourage plagiarism. It's bad, right? But there is something about doing ministry in the life of the church that says, no, plagiarize. Copy that model.
Don't reinvent the wheel. If it works, it works.
Exactly. And be ready to acknowledge the fact that there are certain things that work.
Yeah.
There are sometimes where in the church you hear people who just refuse to adopt a practice. Like Eucharistic adoration has been historically, at least in my experience, this is my experience, maybe other people haven't had it, but what I keep running up against so many times is people who say, we can't do adoration because people can't handle it. People can't handle it. It's completely false.
Best thing.
And if you look at any successful youth ministry activity, it involves Eucharistic adoration. Every time. Look at the things that succeed that are actually bearing fruit.
Yeah.
And if we would just copy those things, just copy them, just do the same thing, you might need to grow a little bit in your own particular ministry, your own approach to it. But oh my goodness, what would happen? All right, I want to read something.
Yeah, because that whole thing was really good.
Ooh, this came up recently in the Office of Readings. Priests are required every day to pray the Liturgy of the Hours. The Office of Readings is one of them. And this is from the Treatise on Spiritual Perfection by Diadochus of Photis.
I don't know how to pronounce really that. I looked at
name. It. Okay. He writes this. If we possess this love for God, we too will rejoice in his glory as St. John the Baptist did, and we shall never stop repeating, his fame must increase, but mine must diminish. I know a man who, though lamenting his failure to love God as much as he desires, yet loves him so much that his soul burns with ceaseless longing for God to be glorified and for his own complete effacement. This man has no feeling of self-importance, even when he receives praise. So deep is his desire to humble himself that he never even thinks of his own dignity. He fulfills his priestly duty by celebrating the liturgy, but his intense love for God is an abyss that swallows up all consciousness of his high office. His humility makes him oblivious of any honor it might bring him, so that in his own estimation he is never anything but a useless servant. Because of his desire for self-abasement, he regards himself as though degraded from his office. His example is one that we ourselves should follow, by fleeing from all honor and glory for the sake of the immeasurable blessings of God's love, for he has loved us so much. I love this idea of loving God, total self-effacement, and just realizing that it's God's love and God's power at work that's going to do anything in us. We need to be ready to accept that. So that brings me then to the last part. I want to encourage any of you who are listening to pray the litany of humility.
Yours is worn.
Oh yeah, mine's worn. I've got this little card here that has the litany of humility on it. It has been in my breviary for close to 20 years.
Wow.
I've been carrying this around with me
It's
for close to 20
broken?
years. Well, because it sits in the breviary very
nice.
nicely and neatly among other holy cards, so that keeps it from getting
Well, I'm just
completely
impressed
destroyed.
the ink is still on it because I have a Padre Pio thing and I had to start writing over it.
Well, what I've figured out to do is instead of holding this in my hands when I pray it, leave it in the breviary so I actually don't even have to touch it.
Then
so then the stuff from my hands isn't getting all of it. That's how it's lasted so long. It's
awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay.
The litany of humility is one of the most powerful litanies I think I can think of. It's written by Cardinal Raphael Mary del Val. Now, one of the great stories about Cardinal Raphael Mary del Val is that there was supposedly a little competition. People thought that he would become pope, and he didn't. And the story is, I believe it was, now I can't remember which pope it was, but the story goes that whoever became pope,
Okay.
the two of them were kind of the two leading contenders.
Oh.
And there was a certain amount of competition between them, thinking that the other one was going to become pope, or thinking that each of them wanted to become pope in some way. Now, I don't know how true it is that anyone ever really wants to be pope. I think that's kind of challenging. Anyway, the story goes that the pope was elected, and everybody thought that it was going to be Raphael Mary del Val, and it was not. And when he got to the pope, the new pope, for the greeting, the new pope looked at him and said, "The stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." And Mary del Val, his response was just spot on and kind of a sick burn. He goes, "And it is a marvel in our eyes." Like, can you imagine? Okay, anyway, he wrote the Litany of Humility, which is, again, one of the most powerful prayers. There are some phenomenal petitions in this prayer.
Yeah.
One is just asking for freedom from the desire of being esteemed, from having other people notice you, from the desire of being honored or praised or preferred to others, from the desire of being consulted or approved, from the fear of humiliation, from the fear of being despised. But then this is where it gets really fun. That others may be loved more than I. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may be esteemed more than I. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That in the opinion of the world, others may increase and I may decrease. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may be chosen and I set aside. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. And then the last one. That others become holier than I, provided that I become as holy as I should. Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. To ask God to give the grace of holiness of life to other people more than to you. If the goal of all of the stuff that we do, if the goal of all of our endeavors is heaven, then I should be jealous about holiness. I want to be the most holy.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
But in fact, the way to holiness is to say, I want others to be holy, because the whole goal, everything that we're aiming for is heaven united with one another. It's heaven together with our brothers and sisters.
That last line reminded me of a quote that it's really, I don't know, it's like here it says tiny Buddha something, but I've heard this enough that says a flower does not think of competing with the flower next to it. It just blooms. Heard this a couple years ago, and I just I don't think of competing. I am what I am. Like you see the marvel of a garden because they've all bloomed. If only one of them bloomed, they're like, well, that's kind of a sad garden. But when they are all blooming, I'm like, the majesty of what that is, and it's captivating and it's fullness and it's beautiful. We, the church, have to be like that. How I desire for everyone to bloom in this church, to be leaders, to just like step into their giftedness and step into their mission. Oh my gosh, it would be so great. But we're getting there. So,
and all of this doesn't mean for a minute that we shouldn't be trying to have great success either.
Exactly. Yeah.
Striving to succeed and being good at what you do is not antithetical to any of this.
No, we have to do it.
One of the great joys that I've had recently, especially, it's a danger for diocesan priests. you'll talk to people, and you'll talk to other priests, and especially pastors, and one of the questions that will come up is, how's your offertory? But one of the awesome things that I've seen happening, and this has been really fun with my priest friends in particular, it's not coming up that way anymore. We're not asking about offertory unless it's like we're sharing some of the stresses of parish administration.
Yeah.
It's not the first thing we talk about. Instead, what's been coming up more recently is what's your attendance like at Mass? Because in pandemic, with people kind of being away, we're looking to see how are you getting people back to Mass, and how's it going?
Right.
What are the lines like for confession at your place? To talk about how people are desiring God's mercy in the sacrament of confession. And then
you're talking about how are people seeking the Lord?
Yeah.
And you want to share
and then
that.
One of my absolute favorites that's come up so many times recently is how's RCIA? How many people do you have getting ready to come into the church to become Catholic? And to share those stories with guys and to hear from them how they're doing and how it's happening, you just realize that God is so at work in all of this, and so His grace is moving so powerfully to bring people in. We don't need to compete against each other.
No.
But we're competing together for the sake of the gospel.
And to share it, you're testifying to the power of grace in people's lives. And when you read the epistles of, Paul, what convinces a lot of people to become believers is when they hear these testimonies. It's like, oh, look what's happening over here. Oh, well, let me check it out then. I'm like, oh, met Jesus. My whole life has changed. Like, there is power in sharing that. Like, to, my favorite glory stories. He looked at me.
Glory.
But it's like, I know when I heard glory stories from other people, I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. That inspires me to now go out there because it's actually motivating. All right, if that happened at your community, or when we would, like, missionaries would get together from different campuses and we would just share about what's happening over here, what's happening over here, what's happening here. Or when I hear from youth ministers, what's happening in California? What's happening in your parish over here? I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I want to use that. That actually inspired me to, like, go a little bit harder, the next couple weeks, if I'm feeling drained. So I think we should end with praying that litany of humility, like, actually.
Oh yeah.
Let's
do that.
Cool.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. O Jesus, meek and humble of heart,
hear me.
From the desire of being esteemed,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being loved,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being extolled,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being honored,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being praised,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being preferred to others,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being consulted,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the desire of being approved,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being humiliated,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being despised,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of suffering rebukes,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being calumniated,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being forgotten,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being ridiculed,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being wronged,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being suspected,
deliver me, Jesus.
That others may be loved more than I,
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
That others may be esteemed more than I,
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
That in the opinion of the world others may increase and I may decrease,
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
That others may be chosen and I set aside,
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
That others may be praised and I unnoticed,
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
That others may be preferred to me in everything,
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
That others become holier than I, provided that I become as holy as I should.
Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it.
Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I'm Father Sam Kachuba.
And I'm Paola Peña.
This is Roar Like the Lamb.